Paul is going to push the live stream button. So if for people in our church that get a notification that it's live, they will be seeing that. But a couple things before we go into our introductions. I was doing my devotions this morning, and it was really appropriate to our program. So I thought, well, I guess I'm just going to share this with you. So the scripture reading was from Romans chapter 5, verses 3 through 5. And not only that, but we also boast in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not disappoint us, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit that has been given to us. So here's the devotion from Disciplines that I read today that I thought, holy moly, this is pretty appropriate. Collective trauma occurs when a population as a whole is wounded. How can we respond to the long-term mental and spiritual effects of the tumult that COVID-19 pandemic has brought? Children have had not adequate time for socialization. Parents have been stressed into sleepless nights by constant work and family care. Our elders have been isolated from family and friends. Church communities could not gather for worship, fellowship, or mission. How are we now experiencing the sustained effects of having to value the opposite of what we hold dear? Over the long haul, a community's capacity to function can be pushed to the limit. What if one questions whether one can endure suffering that seems to have no end? What if outward conditions change, but the inward effects of what has been remain with us? The sequence of effects in Romans 3 that we just read is often read as a spiritual demand, a moral ideal. In difficult times, the promise that suffering will produce endurance, character, and hope may seem just too much to bear. But can we read this verse, originally written to the early Christians, not as a demand, but rather a comfort? Might we put away moralistic interpretations and read it anew as a nudge, a reminder, an opportunity to refocus, especially when the damaging effects of life just seem too much? So it is a reminder that when we pay attention to the evidences of God's love, we are reawakened to the truth that hope does not disappoint us. Consider the small signs of God's love in creation: birds that migrate and reappear at our windowsill, spring animal babies born in the woods, the beauty of leaves in the fall. All these and more are reminders of life lived, hope sustained, and loved renewed. So thank you again for attending, and I'm going to turn it over to Cherie and Sharon as they introduce our program today and our speakers. You bet.
Well, I'm pretty excited about this program. In fact, we plan the programs, as you guys probably know, like at least 9 months ahead of time. I thought I was loud enough, y'all could probably hear me. Anyway, we started talking about different topics, and the one thing I like about United Women in Faith is the vision was like turning faith, hope, and love into action on behalf of women, children, and youth around the world. So when we started looking at that and looking at some of the themes for the year, we started talking about what we had seen going on. And COVID has such a big impact on everyone, but especially on children. And when I think of children, I'm thinking of like little kids all the way up to teenagers and college-age students. So we thought, what could we do to like bring together some people and discuss what these impacts have been? And this has become even more real for me in the past few weeks. I've been doing some part-time subbing at Columbia River High School, where I used to teach and where Felicia went, and talked to some students that the last time I saw them was March 2020. So they were sophomores. Now they're graduating. And it was kind of funny, to see them because kids change a lot in just like 2 years, even when they're teenagers. And so as I talked to them, we were saying, oh my gosh, the last time I saw you was on Zoom. The last time I saw you in person was March 2020. And so they, in their adolescence, they kind of reverted back to that time, and they were telling me, oh wow, Miss Fitz, at that time I was doing such and such. And then they started sharing on their own, and most of these were boys, and usually boys don't talk, but they really talked about this, is they talked about the changes and how COVID had impacted them during this time frame. And some of them even went so far as to say, you know what, I really missed, which I thought was funny, I really missed coming to school because I missed having my peers around me, and I missed having a teacher, an adult, saying this is what you need to do. They really wanted boundaries, and they didn't have any boundaries when they were sitting at home. So those that were already self-disciplined didn't have as hard a time as those who, needed it. So today we looked at all the different age groups. So we have 4 speakers, 2 on video. Our first speaker, and I guess we can go to the next slide, Paul, and show who our speakers are. Sherry Pereira. So she's an elementary school teacher. She's told me she's been teaching 20 years, which I find amazing, at Martin Luther King Elementary School here in Vancouver. So she does a kindergarten and first grade loop, and I think right now she has kindergarten, but Sharon's going to tell us more about her presentation. Then we have Eric Chen, who's a member of our church, and Eric's a student at WSU Vancouver, and he's studying psychology as his major. And then we have Megan Bledsoe, who I've known since 2007. We both used to work at Discovery Middle School, and Megan's a counselor there, and she has also been awarded, which I've lost my notes. I was so impressed because Megan never toots her own horn, but she did tell me this. I had to pull it out of her, that she was a 2020 Washington School Counselor of the Year. Congratulations, Megan. That's great. And then she was a finalist in 2021 for National School Counselor of the Year. Then we have Angie Ball, who's at Daybreak, and I'll let her tell you more about Daybreak. She started out for 7 years. She was a substance use disorder counselor, and I'm amazed that you guys have been doing these jobs for this long. I think it's fabulous. And then a clinical supervisor for 5 years, and now she's a substance use disorder clinical director across the agency. So I think that'll kind of give you a sense that we're running the gamut from kindergarten all the way up to college to try to get a perspective and an insight into what some of these kids have been going through. So Sharon, would you like to come up and talk about the video we're going to see from Sherry?
My daughter Sherry couldn't be here. She's in Canada right now attending a school. She teaches kindergarten right now, but will loop up to first grade. But what her experience was at the beginning of this pandemic was completely online, and that didn't work very well. The kids are 5 years old. They didn't know what they were doing. And so that went on, and then it went half the kids came in and half the kids got their schooling online. And it wasn't until all of the kids had to come to school that she realized how little they had picked up through being online. So they are catching up now. And she put together this video for me to show what 5- and 6-year-olds are doing now, that they're catching up. They're not nearly as far along as her previous classes were, just because, she hasn't been there to teach them. So what you're going to see is Sherry talking about the 4 steps of learning how to deal with issues. So it's a 4-step program, and she's just beginning on the first step. So the kids are talking in the background. Unfortunately, she can't show any of the kids, so you'll see a big blotch, but otherwise you'll hear them. And then the last little section is about what happens when a child is upset, and that happens multiple times a day in kindergarten. And so so she talks about what she does for the child who is upset and what goes from there.
Hi, in this first clip, you are gonna see my class doing the STEP song, and that teaches them the 4 problem-solving steps: STEP. S, say the problem. T, think about the solutions, possible solutions. E, explore the consequences. And P, pick the best solution. So we have not been working on these 4 steps for very long, so we are focused today on S, the first part, say the problem. You're gonna hear them sing the song, and then we'll talk about how to use that in real situations. Rose up, what does it say? I can solve problems with other people. That's what we're really working on, isn't it? Yeah. All right, so we are gonna do our second step, lesson 16, say the problem. I'm kind of sad because this got erased, remember? But I'm gonna write it back up there. Remember, we have 4 steps. S, say the problem. T, think of solutions. E, explore the consequences. P, pick the best solution. Okay? So today we're just working on S, say the problem. So to start us off, let's do our song.
If I'm stuck and in trouble and I don't know what to do, there are 4 problem-solving steps that always help me through. Number 1, it's the S step.
Say the problem.
What is the problem? Number 2, it's the T step.
Think of solutions. What can I
What
do?
can we do? Number 3, it's the E step.
Explore the consequences. What might happen?
Number 4, it's the P step.
Pick the best solution.
What will work the best?
In this second video clip, we use a social emotional curriculum, and in parts of that curriculum, the students and the teacher will look at different scenarios, either in photos or videos, and we will discuss it using the lens of S, say the problem. So today they're gonna see some different kids in different situations, and we're gonna discuss what the problem is. All right, so before you shout it out, I want to make sure everybody's staying down on the bottoms. And Liam, why don't you go put your coat away? When humans cross their arms like this, they might be in the red zone or the yellow zone. Raise your hand if you can tell me what that means, Whitney, when you see that body language. The letter S. What was the letter S? Say the problem. So here you're going to get to see a little video of some sisters. So this may be familiar to you if you have a sister. And even if you don't have a sister, I don't have a sister. I'm sure you could make it, oh, my turn. I'm sure you could think of your brother or a friend or a cousin or someone. So Grace is the bigger girl, and Lizzie is the little sister. And can you see what Grace likes to hold in her hand? Raise your hand. Camila, what does Grace like to hold in her hand? What is she holding in her arms?
A doll.
Yeah, she holds her doll. She likes to hold her doll and pretend to feed it a bottle when she is watching TV. That's like her thing she likes to do. But she has a little sister named Lizzie. Let's see what happens.
Wait, but Bob, I think my Bob's sister is named Lizzie.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, my name Lizzie too. That's rude.
Okay. So take a look at Grace. Grace is the big girl with this pink and orange shirt and the doll. What's her face? What is she doing with her face? Whitney? Who can say the problem? We're not gonna blame anyone. We're just gonna say the problem. Nathan, what's the problem right here?
What's the problem?
What is the problem here?
I think she's trying to pull the doll's head off.
So she wants the doll. Is that the problem?
Yeah,
All right. What do you think the problem is? want you to turn to someone that's close to you and tell them a problem that you see. So Maya, you're talking with Harry. So Harry, turn around and talk with Maya. Amelia, you're talking with River, you're talking with Nathan. You can join these girls. Nathan, go talk with River. River's behind you.
Anyone is telling me?
Turn around and talk with Azul and Jasmine. So you're just saying one problem that you see. So Maya, tell him one problem that you see on the playground, and Harry, you turn around and tell her one problem you see. Okay? In this third video clip, you're going to see an example of our community circle. We sit in a circle during this time every morning, and we discuss either serious issues, problems that we're having, or we talk about the thing we just learned, such as say the problem, and apply that to our school. Or we do something silly and fun and community building, such as a silly question, a would you rather question. So that's what you'll see in this next clip is we did a silly question, which is, would you rather drink sour milk or eat a rotten egg? Eat sour milk or a rotten egg? You have to pick one. Okay, so think for yourself for a second. Think. Our voices are off, lips are zipped. Even our legs are crisscrossed. Move back, please, onto the perimeter. You're not on the perimeter, Ivan. Okay. All right. I guess if I had to pick, I would rather drink sour milk.
Sour milk.
No, say the whole sentence. I would rather.
I would rather have sour milk.
Yes, and don't put the microphone too close to your face, okay? Sour milk. All right, pass it to Harry. In this fourth video clip, you will see an example of a brain break. We do brain breaks all the way through the day. Whenever we need to move our bodies or have a break from the academics. We do that during our social emotional time as well in the morning. And it's a great way to get exercise and have some fun. Big breaks. In this final video clip, you will see an example of a student utilizing our 4 colored zones to tell me how she's feeling. Blue zone, red zone, yellow zone, green zone. The blue zone represents sick, sad, tired, lonely, bored. The red zone, or the yellow zone, sorry, would be irritated, annoyed, getting wild, silly, things like that. And then the red zone is bodies out of control, unable to make decisions beyond fight or flight. And then the green zone is calm and ready to learn, calm and focused. So you can see she will be telling me about what zone she's in, and then she walks over to our calming corner, which all classrooms have a calming corner, and it's a place where children can self-select to go to when needed. And there are lots of tools there. She puts a weighted blanket on her lap to ground and calm her. She uses some charts that we have there to choose a method that she will use for calming. And she uses a breathing chart. And then she uses a little stuffed octopus as a check-in with me to tell me how she's feeling after she does those things. I usually would not be standing there. This is something that the children do on their own. But of course I'm filming it, so that's why I'm talking to her and standing there. And then in the end, you see she is not feeling in the green zone yet, so I invite another student to come and chat with her, which we do often. What's the matter? What happened at recess? Okay, do you want to show me what zone you're in? You're in the blue zone? Okay, are you feeling sad or lonely? Sad? Okay, how about you go to the calming corner? Okay, how about we try one of our calm down routines? Okay, do you want to try the dots on the hand? Not that one? Okay, which one would you like to do? Okay, slow breaths. Do you want to grab the chart right there? Remember, I should see your stomach moving as you breathe. Good. Okay, how are you feeling now? Would you like to show me with the octopus? You're still feeling sad? Okay. So would you like to have a friend to talk to? Okay. So Jasmine, you're gonna be in it too. So I want you to come into the calming corner. And she'd like a friend to talk to about what's going on at recess, okay? Would you sit down and talk?
Hi there, my name is Chen, and I wanted to talk to you guys about my experiences with COVID-19 as I went through high school with it, and now as a freshman in college, my experiences with it then. COVID-19 was a very drastic thing, as you can imagine, and it definitely taught me a lot of things that I don't think I would have learned as quickly if I wasn't put in the position where I was. The first time that I experienced COVID-19 was back in my junior year of high school. I remember hearing about it over social media and different news sources, but for the most part, everyone took it kind of nonchalant and wasn't really worried about what was going to happen. A lot of people were talking about it being the next flu. And so, as you can imagine, none of us took it very seriously. It was just another thing that was happening in the world. And because it was happening so far off on a different side of the planet, a lot of us never even thought it would come touch us. I remember being in my band class. We were rehearsing one of the sets that we had been working on pretty much the entire year. Like, we had got the music at the beginning of the year, and we were getting closer to the end and getting ready to go to all these huge trips, all these huge festivals that really make a band what it is. And I remember we were practicing, and more students just kept getting distracted. People kept turning on their phones and then like instantly looking like shocked and just like kind of dreading, really. And I was like, what's going on? And one of my friends was like, they canceled WinFest. WinFest, for the people that don't know, is a festival that a bunch of the bands from different districts, sometimes even different states, come to Central Washington to perform and get guidance from not counselors, but like clinicians. And they get improvement over all of the work they've done, and it really helps us like zone in on what we're playing, as well as it's just a great way to connect with the people in your band. And some of my favorite memories being in the band program have been on trips. So knowing that one of the biggest trips that we were going on got canceled to a date to be determined was kind of a big hitter. I mean, we were losing a lot of really cool people that year, and we were all looking towards that festival as like a way to like finally reconnect and enjoy time together. And now it was gone. And I think, at least for me, I thought this is the worst it's gonna get, right? Like, yeah, we lost Winfest, but there's other festivals and there's other events to go to, and just because this one's canceled doesn't mean the rest is. And obviously that was more hopeful thinking than anything, because within the next couple of weeks, schools were getting shut down. It seemed as if every other county, every other state was slowly shutting down more and more districts. So it was like bound for Evergreen to be next. And I was sitting in my 5th period, my second to last class of the day. And we were working really hard to try to wrap up a new section that we had just learned. And when we got the surprise announcement over the intercom saying, school's out, it was a weird, almost like surreal feeling looking back on it now. Because I remember going to hang out with friends like immediately after school because we were all like, whoa, that really happened. And a lot of us were kind of excited because I don't think anyone really expected us to be gone for more than 2 weeks. So when they told us school was out, we all took it as a, like, okay, sure, like, we can have our spring break be extra long. Our summer break is a little longer too, like, that's fine. And I was talking to all these people thinking that I was gonna make plans with them once the 2 weeks were up. And it's almost like weird to think that in some cases I didn't see those people again until graduation that year or years later. That was kind of like the last time I ever saw those people, and that's a difficult thought to have, I think it really taught me the kind of fragility of time in terms of how little we do have and how much can be lost over the course of a week or 2 weeks or a month, And so moving on through my senior year, of course, that was difficult. It was something that was highly looked at. I mean, the seniors from the year before felt terrible that they had lost their graduation, and of course everyone was so sympathetic about it, and we were all trying to give our regards. That's definitely not easy, and I'm very grateful that my class got to graduate, but for a good half, maybe like 3/4 of our year, like, we didn't get to experience anything that came with being a senior. We didn't get the sunset or the sunrises that a lot of schools do. There was no feeling of seniority when everyone that's in the same class as you has just a black screen over a Zoom call. And it was just hard to feel as if like you were part of the community sometimes. It was literally like watching like what was supposed to be like the funnest year of like your high school career like just slip by, and there's nothing you can do about it. And so even when we did come back, it was like, I don't want to say pointless. It was definitely something that I was super grateful for, but I definitely know that a lot of my friends saw that coming back was almost like, why do it in the first place if we're only going to be here for half a day, 2 days out of the week? And I can't, like, the other thing was we couldn't like see people. We had to go directly to classes, had had to sit in, sometimes in silence, sometimes not, in a giant gym where you weren't supposed to sit or get close to anyone within like a certain range of like selected seating. And so, I don't know, it was almost like being trapped in this weird limbo state of, yeah, do I want to be here, or like, is there any point to being here? I don't know. I still don't know if I have fully wrapped my head around it. But then I also got a lot of questions and had a lot of people wonder like how it affected things more personally for me. And what I can say towards those is that it's a weird mix, I think. I think that what COVID did for me was give me kind of the time and space to kind of reflect on who I was as a person. I think that's a little harder to do when you're like constantly on the go doing things with other people. And so I know for like a fact, at least towards like the beginning of the multiple lockdowns that we went through, I definitely felt like my like mental well-being improved, just because of all the stress that I was having throughout school. Being able to take some time off and know that kind of everything that I was doing is on pause, it was kind of freeing, for sure. But definitely towards the end, as I like reflect on the past couple of years and what's happened, I can definitely tell kind of the negative impacts that it's had on my mental well-being. I went from, I want to say innocent, but I don't know. I guess that's the easiest way to put it, is this innocent person who had all these like hopes and aspirations and this constant optimism to being more of a realist and taking things more face value than making up a utopia in my head about how things were going to work out. I definitely became way less social, as embarrassing as that might be to admit. But I feel like it's kind of hard to be social in the state of the world that we're in right now, because there's just so much going on. It's hard to know if you're doing the right thing, the safe thing, not just for yourself, but for others. I think that the last thing that anyone would want to do is accidentally be the reason that a loved one who is sensitive to this kind of stuff, who is more susceptible to it, got sick. And so it's always like a weird give and take of who do I invite myself to, or like who do I introduce myself to? And so you're always on edge about going to classes, about seeing a bunch of different people all the time, from going to different classes and stuff like that. But along with just being less social, I think some good things that have come out of it have also just been that, like I said, I've been able to focus on myself a bit more and start reflecting a lot more about what I want to do, and I think it has helped in doing that. I think some of the greatest moments of realization happen when you hit rock bottom, and so having to go through all the hardships that I did go through definitely taught me how to just pick myself up and keep going. And I learned a lot about life through this, and it's forever going to be a part of me. the things happening in your life, but the point is that it's always going to have something there for you that's going to put you in an uncomfortable situation, that's going to make you feel as if you have no control over it, and you have to learn how to like live and be comfortable with that discomfort. That's kind of been a quote that I've tried to keep living by as I go through life, is like I need to get comfortable with being or I need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so, yeah, I think that's a pretty good way of summing up my COVID experience. Just being really insightful, and pursuing what I'm doing.
Okay, so we didn't plan for it to be like this order, but we've seen like the two ends, right? The kindergartners and then the college students. And it's interesting listening to Eric, because he really echoes a lot of the things that I heard from the high school kids that I knew as sophomores and juniors and seniors. And it has been a trying time for them. And it's really interesting to me that what he said and what I've heard from other students is that it could possibly take two paths. Some boys told me that this was a time of reflection for them also, and that they looked into future careers, and it gave them more time to go online and study things, and it affected that what they were going to study when they went to college. And then there were other kids that they just spiraled. You know, they couldn't take it. And so now they're trying to get enough credits to be able to graduate. So it's interesting to me how people handle things. So now we're going to be doing middle school with Megan, and then Angie's going to talk to us about Daybreak. And I think if we could probably hold our questions to the end, maybe we'll have each person talk, and then if we want to talk about the things that Eric said and the things that Sherry said, we could do that. Is that okay with everybody?
Hi, I'm Megan Bledsoe. I've been at Discovery Middle School for over 15 years, and I had the 8th grade class in March of 2020. So I had to, help those students transition into high school while remote, which was certainly a challenge, and try to create some of those cultures and climate traditions that our student shared, which about being in that last year is really important to those students. And then working with their incoming 6th graders, which was also a significant challenge, since that's a big transition year, and to have to do that fully remote. It's great to be back in person and be back into routines, but we certainly have a lot to make up academically, socially, and emotionally. Our middle school students definitely, that's a pivotal time regardless of how challenging societal strain is, and this really added a significant barrier to them creating those social dynamics, learning those problem-solving skills, learning how to create that self-development and feel comfortable with themselves and their environment. The first video was great. It showed a lot of the things that is happening in the Vancouver School District, such as all classrooms are integrating social emotional learning now to sort of try to make up and support our students with those developmental stages that have been sort of stunted in some ways. The second step curriculum she mentioned, we're using that across the board. Certainly the videos are different at the middle school level and the lessons, of course, but similar concepts of learning conflict management, emotional regulation, problem solving, goal setting, things like that. We also have a lot of supports around that calming corner that they showed. We have aspects of that where we build in opportunities for students to take breaks and self-regulate. We have the den, or we have something we call room service, where kids can kind of call and take a little walk and talk. They need a little space for that. We also have had a huge increase on focusing counselors doing counseling work in the school, which has been great because historically school counselors haven't necessarily had the time to provide those important supports for students because they've been burdened with non-counseling duties, and the district has done a really significant shift away from that so counselors can do that direct service for students, which is great because I've been running a lot more groups, doing a lot more direct service for students, and yeah, it's been a whirlwind, but those kids are very resilient. I have a lot of hope for them. They've already made a lot of progress in 1 year, so I think that they're gonna be better and stronger from this, but as Sherry pointed out, some of them took it as an opportunity to work on themselves and find their identity, and some just really it stalled things out. So we're kind of across the board on making up for lost time. And even those students that were coping really well, it still had some significant challenges. So it's been a whirlwind, but it's been a great progress for all of them. But I'll keep it short and sweet. We can always go to questions later, but I'll pass it on to you.
Okay, it's on. I'm Angie Ball. I'm SED Clinical Director, Substance Use Disorder Clinical Director for Daybreak Youth Services. For those of you who are not familiar with Daybreak, we provide co-occurring treatment for youth, age 12 in outpatient, 13 in inpatient, up to age 18 in inpatient, and 24 in outpatient. My primary responsibilities are in our 2 inpatient facilities, both here and in Spokane, Washington. Our female identifying clients go to Spokane, and our male identifying clients stay here locally in Clark County. One of the biggest things that I saw with the pandemic was the severity of the drug use by the time the kiddos get to us. Over my 18 years at Daybreak, most kids came in when they started getting in trouble at school, maybe getting caught with some marijuana, some alcohol. We'd get them into outpatient services. If it escalated or if we couldn't resolve it with outpatient services, it may progress to inpatient. Sometimes their substance use would progress to additional substances by the time they got to inpatient. Now, I would say the shift from their primary substance use diagnosis, we've gone from about what was previously 80% of the primary diagnosis was cannabis use disorder, to now we are about 60% opiate use disorder, most coming in severely addicted to fentanyl. So in reflecting on that data, what we have seen is, I feel like a series of things happened. So one, I should probably also state that probably 80% of our clients are low-income families. Majority of them, their families also suffer addiction issues and have lack of resources. So when it came time for all the schools to shut down, I remember just sitting down going, oh no, this is not good. Because the kids that we saw, school was their safe place. School was where they went to get fed. School was where they went to have counseling services. School is where they went, where adults, safe adults, healthy adults hugged them, told them they loved them, told them that they could do things. School is where they had friends, where they learned that they had skills and talents with sports activities and clubs. Take that all away with where adolescents are in their development as far as searching for their identity. I remember just going, this is not going to be good. And it wasn't long. We saw all outpatient services across the state, country, move to telehealth. While I think telehealth has helped many people be able to have access to more things, I'll say that that applies more to adults than it does children. Children need connection. Children need to sit next to somebody. Children need a hand on the shoulder, reassurance. Telehealth does not work for that. So you saw kids who were in outpatient services to try to help their substance use problems before it progressed, now not engaging in services. We also have a lot of our clients who have had criminal charges, so a lot of them are involved with juvenile probation. There was no more probation meetings. They weren't being asked to come in to provide UAs. When there was probation violations, they did not receive consequences of detention time. Could be some pros and cons to that, but regardless, it was a free-for-all, to say the least. So in outpatient services typically would collect your UAs as well, and no longer was doing that. So take away all the in-person physical relationships with kids, sit them in front of a computer and ask them to stop using, and also on top of that, let's take away everything that they know, all the healthy coping that they did have, which was all at school. And then of course you have the good majority of the kids who experience physical and sexual abuse, and now they're at home stuck with their families who are physically and sexually assaulting them. And no eye is on the kids to identify that, leading them to resources for services. So that went on what was supposed to be a couple weeks to 2 years. And now, as far as the kids that we get, by the time we get them in inpatient, most of them have had to go through a detox, which has been, I've worked with Daybreak my entire time in this field. An adolescent having to go through detox was rare, just because usually they haven't been using long enough to develop the severe physical dependence on the substance. But now, because of the fentanyl use, the increased opiates, it's no longer just marijuana. They actually have to physically withdraw before coming into services. Oh, by the way, there is no detox services for adolescents in Clark County. So, and if you use the hospital, they'll give them a UA and clear them to get out of the hospital because there's no space, because they need that for COVID patients. Most of the kids are on Suboxone by the time they get to us. Luckily, we have some great partnerships with Peace Health that can help provide some of those services while they're here. Luckily, at our inpatient facilities, we have nursing staff, we have mental health therapists, substance use disorder counselors, a variety of positions, because we do fully integrated services. So we can handle a lot of that, but it's just not the same. Usually, kids could come in, you could just get right down to building the rapport, building the connection, start identifying their goals, building up their support systems to, they don't even feel well enough to sit in session. And it's taking much longer for kids to get through treatment, and also insurance companies are not giving any additional time for this. So we may still get only the amount of time that we have authorized to do twice as much work. And I think the one thing that stands out too with all of this is our mission is providing hope by demonstrating love and saving lives. So a lot of what Mom had read in the scripture in the devotional this morning really hit hard because that definitely applies. But what I've noticed is things from clients, like comments about, we had a client just the other day talk about how all he wanted was just to be held and hugged for an hour so he could cry. And when asking, when's the last time that happened? When's the last time you got to just have someone hold you and let you cry? He said, I don't remember. It was probably a couple years ago when I last went to school. I don't think people realize how much kids need socialization. And while a lot of the telehealth options, again, is convenient for a lot of people. For our youth, it was devastating. It really was in so many different ways. Let's see. Oh, I should talk a little bit about here, where I'm primarily here at the Clark County inpatient facility, but our Spokane inpatient, where they serve the female identifying youth, we actually just had to open up, but fortunately, the first restorative receiving center in the state of Washington for youth, for sexually trafficked youth. And there's been so many kids now that have been picked up from sex trafficking, it's skyrocketed in the last couple of years. So we've just started providing services there in Spokane, but we're seeing an increase there. The kids that are coming in, they go through academic testing when they first come in, so our school teachers can figure out where they are academically, tries to get their IEPs from their school, try to get their transcripts to figure out where we've got a couple months to work with them, how can we help them the most in this amount of time. Most of the kids have not earned anything as far as credits go in the last couple of years. So we're literally starting from academic levels, sometimes second, third grade level, and they might be 15, 16 years old. So it just, all the way around, has just had drastic effects. And as far as the Zoom, like school over Zoom, a lot of the kids will talk about, yeah, I was there because as long as I turned my computer on, I was marked as present, but I turned my screen off and I was using all day long. I just sat there in my room and got high and turned my camera off, and that's what I did. So they actually had more opportunity to do that because most of the parents weren't home or not involved, to be able to monitor that. So I feel like that probably covers the majority of it, but I will pass it over, I guess, to questions at this point.
If you have questions, you can say it, and then we'll ask the two of them to repeat it so that when they're recording it, they can hear the question.
That's a good question. You mentioned a lot of the kids are on Suboxone by the time they get to you. Can you explain what Suboxone?
Yeah, so the question is, what is Suboxone? Suboxone is a medication to help with opiate use disorder. So it blocks receptor sites. So a couple different things. It helps with the withdrawals of the opiate, but also can help prevent overdose in the event of a relapse because of how it blocks the receptor sites. So it's just medication-assisted therapy is another name for it, but it's used in combination to treat the physical symptoms so that we can work on the emotional part and the psychological effects of the addiction.
Is there any follow-up on how many stayed straight after their discharge from daybreak?
So the question is there any follow-up on, I think what you're kind of describing is a success rate as far as abstinence of using substances after they leave daybreak? Unfortunately not. We had a grant several years back where we were tracking that and did the best we could, but unfortunately most of the families move around significantly, and keeping track of them was almost impossible. We are fortunate though enough to where we get a lot of kids that call on a regular basis. I still have I say a kid, but I think he's 30 something now, but he still calls me probably every 6 months, to tell me about his life and everything that he's doing. So we have the privileges of hearing the really great things. We don't hear about the ongoing challenges, which just overall, the chance of a youth going through treatment and never using again is very, very small chance of that. But that's also part of the treatment that you provide is not if you relapse, it's when you relapse and how to address that. Because you can work with a kid when they're 15 and asking them to go through graduations and 21st birthdays and marriages and all of the things without any use of substances in our society, unfortunately, is not common. So you're teaching a lot of coping skills, a lot of harm reduction, and a plan for when relapse occurs. So the question is around how with as many fentanyl overdoses and deaths that there are right now, how that affects everyone significantly. I mean, every kid that comes in has lost someone to some kind of a drug overdose. I didn't even get into the discussion of the increased suicide rates. We're getting most of our kids, rarely do we get a kid into our program that hasn't attempted suicide. And oftentimes when processing with them around what's behind their suicidality, it's loss of others in their life, or guilt. We've had kids that have provided substances to their friends, and their friends ended up overdosing and dying. So all the guilt that comes with that. So I can't stress enough how just loss in general, and even if it's not an overdose, just loss in general, how that is such a barrier to sobriety for most of these kids.
So the question was, do we see an increase of drug use at the middle school level? I would say across the board, when we look at the use at the middle school level, there has been an increase. It has not been as severe as what they're seeing at Daybreak. I think that is starting later on average, that process, but certainly there is the component of simply absent students, and when they're not there, we don't really know to the level, because having that connection and that community of support is the strongest protective factor. And there's a lot of students and families that simply got into the habit of not coming to school when things went remote. And even as we've gone to in person, there's still a huge portion that have not come back to school or rarely come to school. And those are ones I am very much concerned about what is going on. So I might not know about it, I might not be seeing it, because they're so disconnected from the school community, and those are probably going to become the potential Daybreak students. And so it's been a lot of rebuilding on how to do that. The truancy program has been very hands-off until fairly recently, due to the fact that there's just so many obstacles and reasons why families have legitimate reasons to not be. They don't want to necessarily do that, but it's coming back, and the resources are, as you mentioned, coming back more in person, which are very much essential for our younger youth. I do agree it's great that we have telehealth. I love that we have that as an additional tool that we have for our mental health resources. It's an important tool, but it definitely cannot be the exclusive tool, especially for our teens. It's just not as effective.
Both of you have vocations. I consider them vocations, that really tie you up emotionally. So, what are some of your tools to help yourselves?
That's a great question. That was about self-care. How do you sort of manage dealing with the weight of our positions? Because it is true, there's a lot. On a daily basis, I'm working with kids that have suicidality, abuse, significant mental health issues, and so it was not always easy. I originally was a clinical counselor. I did my first 2 years after getting my degree for that, and it was much too much for me. I had to leave the field because I was way too young to be able to take that on and shed that. So I switched to school counseling so that I could at least have more of a variety. I wasn't just simply dealing with the most intense situations. It was still incredibly difficult for those first 2 to 3 years. I'd say the things that helped me a lot were getting my own personal therapist and finding routines and rituals for being able to check out. So I live in Portland, and the crossing the bridge is a metaphor that I leave my professional self, across the bridge. My Vancouver self is this, and my Portland self is another one. I even, in very difficult times, because some parts of the year are more challenging than others, I have a symbolic measure of wearing only school clothes, and then I remove those when I get home. So I take a symbolic, like I'm taking the armor off, because I do have to shield my heart. Like, you have to be empathetic, but you can't just take it all in. So once I get home, I have my, strategies of those rituals. But for bigger self-care things, I do certainly a lot of exercise. I just came from double Dutch jump rope before I got here, so if I look a little sweaty, I was just getting my 40-plus double Dutch group in. I do a lot of walking, biking, and what I call shenanigans. So anytime there's something silly and fun and interesting to do, I definitely like to participate in things like that. Like, I'm going to go to a haunted ghost reading coffee shop storytelling event later on, I've got hot balloon air ride planned for me. So I just do a lot of like taking care of myself and checking and leaving things across the bridge.
Yeah, all of those things, except I think for me, the hard part in my position is I'm never not working. So, it's calls, could be 24/7, for any kind of crisis or things like that. So definitely the drive home is a very sacred time for me. When I had first started our outpatient program, it happened to only be about a half a mile from my home. I found myself driving around a lot before going home, even though it was only a half a mile from my home, just because I hadn't yet let things go. But definitely that drive home is a substantial time to, it might be just listening to music, it might be having phone conversations with people. It's also hard because with the confidentiality, you can't talk about what happens. So, as you get home and, Luke asks, how was your day? What happened? It was okay. And he says, okay? Like what? And it was okay. And that's pretty much all you can really say. So it's not like the typical work where you can, oh, this happened, and you'll never believe it because everything's just so confidential. But I think just, all the things that she mentioned, just around that focusing the mind is really what it is for me. It's that intentional release of the day. Even though I know I'm going to probably get more phone calls later on, I'll take those as they come, but just that intentional release of it, focusing my mind on my family, on my responsibilities at home, on my animals, whatever it may be, just the things that I have complete control of, I tend to definitely engage more in outside of work. Just it just kind of helps keep that focus, I think. But don't get me wrong, there's days when I do not do a good job, and sometimes just have to call it an early night, and 7:30 sounds like a great bedtime. Let's try again tomorrow.
Let's take two more questions so we recognize your time. I won't keep you all day. I have one for Angie. What percentage of the kids that you get that is probably not on a school profile go back to school or an alternative school and actually do higher education?
So the question is, what percentage of the kids drop out and then return back or move on to higher education? As far as like the long run of things, I don't always know, because we don't always know what happens after they leave Daybreak. What I can say is a good portion of kids, by the time we get them and realize they have 0 credits and they're 17, should be in their senior year, we have to have a lot of conversations with them around what their academic goals are, and usually it's, I, at this point, try to get my GED. So a lot of the school program that we have is helping kids take practice tests for GED, studying, you know, every now and then we get kids that have schoolwork from their home schools, and so they can work on that and just continue to earn credits while they're at Daybreak. But unfortunately, a lot of them have had to make the tough decision to just pursue their GED, and you know, we recognize that and celebrate that, because that's still an accomplishment for them, and for some of them, that's the best. That's the absolute best, and we can, if we can get them to have any kind of motivation even for that, that's a good day. So we've seen a lot of kids get their GEDs at Daybreak while they're in our services, so that's always fun, having those kind of celebrations and having graduation ceremonies and, you know, things like that that they can't experience out there. There's been several kids that have, you know, that have stayed in contact with us that have gone on to school. I've probably over the years, I've had, I think that I can count at the top of my head, 5 of my past clients have gone on to take classes to be addiction counselors and then come back and become counselors at Daybreak. So that's happened several times. That's always fun to see. So it happens, but everyone also, when we do a lot of work with them around exploring what is, sometimes college isn't the best plan for everybody, and sometimes we get a lot of kids into Job Corps, trade schools. We're doing a lot of that work when they're there, just to kind of help give them some kind of hope for and a plan for their future.
My question is for both of you. Where do you get your, how are the kids brought to you? Do you have your school hierarchy? Are you in courts? How is it that they break this?
So the question was, how do the youth get to us to get services? So mine is probably more simple and straightforward than yours, where I'm incredibly visible. I make myself very visible for students. I'm on the Wildcat TV all the time. I'm out in the halls, I'm in the cafeterias, I'm in their classrooms. And so you'd be hard pressed to find a kid who doesn't know who I am and what I do. Because I'm very much in their business, and I know all my kids as well, so I know them by name, and they can just literally come right up to me and just be like, hey, Miss Bledsoe, can I see you later? And I try to keep passes on me, and I can write them a pass, and then I have QR codes in every single classroom in the cafeteria, in the library, in the halls next to my office, so even if they think about it and they don't see me, but they think about it in the middle of the day, they can use their phone or use their iPad, scan it, and then I get an alert that that student wants to see me. They can also tell their teacher, the teacher can call me, see if I'm available, or email me. And a lot of me reaching out to kids, so I'd say half of it is kids saying, I need to see you for something, and half of it is that teachers, administrators, or parents are contacting me and saying, I'm noticing something with this kid, can you follow up with them? So it's about half and half, and there's no escaping me. I'm pretty easy to get to, and I'm in their business all the time.
We get, our referrals come from all over. Some are probation recommendations. We used to get a lot from schools. Unfortunately, that stopped in the last couple years, but assume we'll be starting to pick up again. Families sometimes will reach out for help for their child. We get, some kids come on a family-initiated treatment act, which is basically their child is not willing to do treatment, but they're mandated to do it. So a lot of what used to be a little bit more streamlined, usually a kid would get in trouble at school, they would be required to go get an assessment at the outpatient facility, potentially engage in services if necessary, and then if the drug use increased or did not reduce, they would get a referral then from the outpatient provider to then the inpatient program. Well, we've lost that piece. We've lost that connecting piece of when it's we need a higher level of care. because of the lack of outpatient resources. So unfortunately, at this point, a good portion of them are social workers at hospitals because kids have come in from overdoses, case managers from psychiatric inpatient facilities where kids have been there for stabilization for suicide attempts. That's a good portion of them right now. So most of our clients are on Washington State Medicaid, and so it's just billed through medical insurance. Or if they have private insurance, then we bill through them as well. We don't get paid from the state what it costs to do the services. So a good portion of Daybreak being a nonprofit organization, the majority of, not the majority, but a good portion of our money comes from philanthropy. And that's just simply because the contract rates don't pay for the services that we provide. But yeah, it's all through medical insurance.
I want to thank both Megan and Angie. This is great. You ladies make a good team. You should probably take this on the road, right? That's what I was thinking. This has been so enlightening, and it gives me a lot of hope knowing that we have people like you that are taking care of our kids and building our future. So I really appreciate that. And as usual, it helps that I have Deb backing me up because she thought to thank you in a substantial way. So you have a little envelope there that shows our appreciation. And thanks to everybody who came today. And thanks to Paul. We need to thank Paul for our AV support. Stephanie's not here, but she helped set us up. So I guess this will be on YouTube, and that's so that people that aren't here, because this is such a good program, I really hate that so many people missed it. And so now everybody at the church can access it, not just the women in our group. So thanks again for your time and for your time.